Hi Sandeep, welcome to yet another edition of The Brief. How are you feeling today?
All good. Spent the week moving houses, so that's done. Something I hope in the future AI will solve. But for now, it was a physical process that I had to deal with.
That's interesting because that's part of the discussion that we're going to be having today. AI's enabling role in consumer businesses globally and in India. We've picked up a report, a very interesting report that came through this week. And it's by a renowned American VC called Mary Meeker of Bond VC. Others know her by the Internet Trends reports that she published a little while ago in 2019. And what the report essentially does is it lays down the statistics to capture the rapid scale of AI's adoption, right, across the world. And it's been faster than any consumer technology product ever before. So this is what is an amalgamation of the highlights of the report. Just to lay out context for the viewers again, ChatGPT reached 100 million users in just 2 months. Netflix took 2 months of its launch. Netflix took a decade to reach that milestone. By April 25, ChatGPT boasts of 800 million weekly users, and that's faster than even TikTok, which took 9 months to reach its first 100 million. So what essentially Mika is pointing, she's pointing investor sentiment to the market, which is a hugely addressable market, which is led by this rapid adoption of ChatGPT and other AI platforms. But AI adoption does not come without the risks, right? So whether it comes to computing costs, environmental regulations, energy limits, infrastructure issues that India is grappling with, and increasingly geopolitical tensions amidst an environment where there's increasingly the US and China are being decoupled. So access to that technology remains questionable when it comes to developing countries. So I take this moment to open up the conversation and just gather your first initial thoughts on the findings of this report.
I guess it's logical that you move from a report on internet trends to now being a report on AI, because I think in general, it's always been a conversation about the internet's changing the world. Everyone's getting connected. Andreessen coined that software is eating the world term, and so we lived in that world for a while, and now clearly, and given the stats you outlined there, we're having a massive shift into the use of the internet through AI as a tool and as a medium. And and so I think it's apt that I guess that shift has happened, and it's logical that now that Mary Meeker's report would be more on AI. I guess, and I guess when you talk about those numbers, I don't know if the report highlighted specifically or not, but I do believe that India is ChatGPT's largest user base as well. So it clearly has a relevance and a use here as well. And I think people are very much getting used to doing many things, whether it's vacation planning, research, through that as a product, because they find that it helps sift through the knowledge, the information to actually distill down knowledge. And so all of that's great. And I think it's good to highlight out the things that are happening. But I guess to some extent we know it because we're living it, we're seeing it, we're using it, and it is impacting. I go back to saying that, look, I think that part of the way I at least have thought about AI is that it's a tool that gets used in the context of fulfilling a need. And so the question becomes, what is the needs that we're trying to fulfill? And and I think that when we look at India specifically, we're in a situation where we've kind of been a little bit behind in terms of this. And there's a great book written a while ago called AI Superpowers, written by Kai-Fu Lee. And he talked about the battle that China and the US were going through in terms of AI and how they were going about it and what China did to actually catch up and to some extent, maybe even surpass. And it was a fair amount of government and infrastructure that was created to enable it and a fair amount of investment. I mean, I think today China is the second largest investor in AI, quite far behind the US, and India is 10th on that list. So I think we have a ways to go to figure out our position in it. But it also kind of brings to the forefront the thought that, look, to some extent, and we've talked about this here, India is a market where we're not necessarily building new mousetraps, we're using them. And it's the application of them that becomes quite interesting. And I think that here, it's not that we have to invent e-commerce, but we use it in terms of how companies operate and sell products. And it's not that we had to, for example, we came up with how we could create a furniture rental business, leveraging internet, tech, data, and everything else to create the right ability to figure out what inventory to hold. And now we'll leverage AI into that as well to create customer service tools and bots to help engage with our customers more effectively, address their issues. So implementation and application of it will become interesting. Now, we may end up catching up in the long run to the infrastructure layer, but in the near term, maybe the right answer will become we'll monetize through the application side of it and create that as an opportunity.
I think we at Lightbox are sitting at a very interesting intersection because the report goes on to mention that, AI will be used increasingly in retail and e-commerce with the rise of virtual experiences. And, where you use AI to pick the kind of clothing that you want, it'll be personalized and tailored to a person's interests. Gaming, whether it comes to immersive experiences through AR, VR, leveraging procedural AI. And also, interestingly, AI systems that are embedded in the physical world, which is what we're seeing with City Flow. As you look at the brands that Lightbox is nurturing, what do you feel is, how do you think AI can be best adopted in the kind of businesses that we are in in the companies that we are interested in?
Yeah. I think city flow is an interesting one because there's obviously a lot of excitement globally around this idea of self-driving cars and everything else. And if you think about a self-driving car in the context of the market here, I think the number of variables you'd have to program into a system to be aware of would be just mind-numbing. And the way in which people cross the road, the way in which bicycles cut across, animals cut across, it's unpredictable. And so having a system that can more actively learn about the ecosystem around and then from that help make better decisions. I think we were talking with Rishabh about stuff at in City Flow about what's going on the roads there, and they talk about the fact that while we only have 1% of the vehicles in the world, we account for 11% of the road accidents in the world. Now, that's just by very virtue of the nature of the kind of environment that we're operating. Now, thankfully, we operate at slower speeds, so I think it kind of balances and it's okay. But nonetheless, I think that we have to find effective ways to reduce that. So now, what City Flow is doing by trying to put more information in the hands of the driver to make better decisions by understanding the surroundings more effectively. That's a use of data coming into a system. Now, again, we're calling this AI, and I think that's great because it's a nice tagline to stick along it. But it's taking inputs and data and making sense of it to help make better decisions. And that's effectively what's happening with AI in a physical context. We're seeing this in terms of gaming as well. You look at the data stream that Router has access to. With over 1 million daily active users on the system, you're getting tons of information about what people are watching and where they're interested in and what they want to learn more about. How do we take that and make better products for them? Now, you could try to do this algorithmically on your own, but with a system that actually can learn from decisions it makes and recommendations it makes and get smarter about what to then offer users going forward, I think it's extremely powerful. So there again, we've talked about this in the past that data is the new oil. And in that context, India is a data-rich country or oil-rich in that context country, right? And so we have this. I think now what we're going to get better at, and I'll give you one more example, which was InMobi, which recently launched Glance AI, which is really a different take on shopping. Now, it's great to see such advancements coming from a company in India, showcasing an entirely new way to shop that is extremely personalized. And so this is what is possible. Now, context is changing, frameworks are changing, but at the end of the day, it's commerce. So I think that, look, people can do the same set of things in life. You're going to buy a certain set of things, you're going to eat, you're going to sleep, you're going to be entertained in a certain set of ways. All of those things will probably be consistent. It's just, can they be done better and can they be enabled in a more effective way? And I think that that's what we're now starting to see, even across our portfolio, saying, how do we use this better? The initial use cases will probably be simple, which is fun. And also because, look, I think it's a better way to inch into this to understand what it is. We're not a market in India that has supported monetization of cutting edge research or innovation. It just hasn't existed that way. But we're a massive market. So there's no denying that that's going to become interesting to everybody who cultivates and develops it. So what will happen, in my view, is that the tech will get developed elsewhere, get refined elsewhere, will get matured elsewhere. But what will happen here is context will be very relevant. So we will understand here how do people shop? How do people shop in India? How is that different? How does quick commerce play a role in our ecosystem here? And how is that different from how grocery shopping plays a role in the West? Now, understanding context is going to be nearly, if not more important than just having technology. So I think being able to marry the two will be important. And so I think what we need to continue to get good at is starting to learn how to use these tools into these environments. And then as they mature, I think we'll have a lead on how to actually take advantage of that in a better way.
And just if we were to look forward, I think India is just beginning to reap the benefits of this rapid digital adoption that's primarily been mobile first. So, according to you, how much time do you think it'll take for us to become proficient at AI? Because the kind of models that are coming out, with Sarvam.ai, Krutrim, they are in the headlines for being inferior models. Can you point us towards some of the factors that are, that are leading to this level, to this playing field not being as leveled as we would want it to be in India?
I think it goes back to the amount of capital being deployed. I think the US spent about 68 billion, I think was the number that we've come across saying that or 67 billion is as that investment against AI-related solutions. In China, it was closer to 7 billion. Here, we're at about 1.4 billion. So we're not spending nearly at that level. Similarly, then that means the developers, the engineers, everybody involved in this are going to places where they will be better compensated. So I think it's going to take time for that ecosystem to develop and evolve. But again, let's go back and look at it. We were late to the game of internet connectivity. Really, look, I started investing in India in 2005 with the expectation that we were going to create these massive internet companies very quickly, and it's taken a while. And I mean, there's that joke, right? Everything happens on Indian Standard Time, but it happens. And I think when it does, we've now, I think, well advanced even what we see happening in the West. Between Aadhaar and UPI alone, I think we are a much more advanced system in terms of digital payments and in terms of citizen identification and services that can be provided thereof. And so I think that it, to some extent, and again, it's not to make an excuse for our inability to have an ecosystem to be innovative in, but I think the benefit of it is, and that's our strength right now, is that we have the base, we have the database, we have the base of people, who are going to consume, the growing economy that's going to keep wanting services around this. And AI and tech implementation across that will just keep bringing the costs down such that these services and products become easier and more cost effective for people to access. So while it's unfortunate that our fundamental infrastructure layer is not keeping pace with global development there, I think that that's the cycle of evolution for a market. We will have our first attempt at things. It may not go well. We'll learn from other people. Other people will have spent a lot more money and made a lot more mistakes. Okay, let's take an even more blatant example of this, the generic medicines industry. India is not an innovator in creating drugs, but an innovator in actually creating the generics around it, and therefore has a very large market share in terms of the global drug market as a result of our ability to create the generics. Now, that's our way of figuring out how to play in that space. I think that we'll have a similar evolution here. Ideally, even better, because the use cases and the implementation of it will be unique enough that it will require some local competency and understanding to build businesses.
And lastly, to wrap things up, I think we're very curious to understand how Lightbox is using AI internally. What kind of operations is it helping, is AI helping us with?
Yeah. So I think, and that's exactly right. We got very excited about the idea of AI, but then we have to take a step back and say, what can we do better? Now, we continuously have questions around what's going on with our companies. How do I think about Bombay Share Company's marketing spend over the last 12 months? How does it compare to the industry, and what is its growth rate looking like versus other companies? And so now we've created our own chat interface for this entire system, whereby rather than having to pull up the last few quarters, and the reality is it's making the analysts' jobs a lot easier. So I think the focus is on, first, we have a lot of data. Can we understand our data better? So it's the same thing, going from data to knowledge. And so AI can help us go from data to knowledge more efficiently and effectively. And therefore, I think that's the implementation of it. So how this chatbot for us will end up enabling us to get access to stuff as we need it, so that we can make better informed decisions and provide better guidance to our portfolio is the primary focus for us. The second area that we're looking at it in is really as we think about spaces. So again, when we're looking at new spaces and trying to understand new verticals, here again, the question becomes, why haven't some of the incumbents in it succeeded? Today, for example, we've seen a lot of players in the luggage space. We've also seen incumbents in the luggage space go down. Why have they gone down? Well, how can we interpret their filed public information more effectively to see what happened in their models and what's happening in the new models? And how do we converge those to understand what's changing? And so we're leveraging it as an application. We're leveraging it by creating our own agents. So I think agentifying it and ensuring that we have an interface with which to interact with that allows us to ask and get the questions that we want, both mining our internal data while also looking at external information to kind of marry them and provide context, I think is going to be really valuable. So I can see it already starting to play out in some of the little things we're doing. I would imagine over the next 12 months, I think our analysts will be super powered in terms of being able to understand information.
That's wonderful.